Hey everybody, me, PJ, back again with another album review. Today I'm going to be talking about the 11th full-length album from the band Rhapsody of Fire. Rhapsody of Fire have released some of the most essential albums in power metal to date. Albums like Legendary Tales, Symphony of Enchanted Lands, Dawn of Victory, and Power of the Dragon Flame contain some of the most catchy and forward-thinking power metal in the genre. On their classic albums, Rhapsody of Fire really just brought together this neoclassical styling with just absolutely catchy and memorable power metal, making for some of the best albums that every power metal fan, in my opinion, should own. Now, up until 2011's From Chaos to Eternity, Rhapsody of Fire was making concept albums that fit into one of two sagas. The first albums up through Power of the Dragon Flame were part of the Emerald Sword saga, and the albums from Symphony of Enchanted Lands Part 2 through From Chaos to Eternity were part of the Dark Secret saga, both of which were two halves of a big fantasy saga. Now, after From Chaos to Eternity was released, the band's co-founders and principal composers, Luca Turilli and Alex Staropoli, decided to part ways, forming two different Rhapsody bands. Alex Staropoli continued under the Rhapsody of Fire name, while Luca left to pursue a band confusingly titled Luca Turilli's Rhapsody, which at the time was pretty hard to distinguish from the other Rhapsody, and a lot of people thought Rhapsody of Fire had changed their name again, and it was a big confusion at that point in time. However, while Luca Turilli's Rhapsody released two albums that were very well received by the fan base, Alex Staropoli's version, Rhapsody of Fire, released Dark Wings of Steel, which was met with a very lukewarm to negative reception from a lot of fans. Personally, I was not a huge fan of the album. It felt like they were really doing away with their neoclassical flair in favor of a more symphonic direction, which worked in some places, but overall the album felt a little lackluster and boring to me. However, through the pre-release singles for this album, Into the Legend and Shining Star, my faith that this Rhapsody of Fire incarnation could make music that sounded just as good as their previous efforts when Luca was still in the band was restored. The title track, Into the Legend, was the first single released off this album. Personally, I found it to be a really good song. I thought it was very catchy, and it reinstilled the more metal vibes into Rhapsody of Fire's music. Later on, we got a second single called Shining Star. Shining Star was more of a ballad, kind of along the lines of, say, like The Magic of the Wizard's Dream, very laid back, not really any metal to be found in this track. However, it was an absolutely beautiful, like, string-heavy ballad, and I thought it was very awesome. Really showcased Fabio Leone's vocal performance very, very well. Now, here we are. Into the Legend is out in Europe now, and it's coming to America in early February via AFM Records in both locations. Going into this album, I was very, very hopeful for Rhapsody's return to form, and I've got to tell you, it did come in certain ways. The album kicks off with an extremely epic and building intro called In Principio, which feeds into the second track called Distant Sky, which really brought back that catchy neoclassical Rhapsody sound that had been missing on the last album. And the album also delivers other great songs, like A Voice in the Cold Wind, which is a very just beautiful song. It's very much sort of a power ballad. It really works very well, as well as the singles I previously mentioned, and Rage of Darkness, which really just felt like sort of a spiritual successor to Rage of the Winter off of Legendary Tales. And closing out the album, we have a almost 17-minute track called The Kiss of Life. Now, Rhapsody of Fire has done absolutely great things with long songs in the past. Just look back to Power of the Dragon Flame's closer, Gargoyles, Angels of Darkness, or From Chaos to Eternity with their closing song, Heroes of the Waterfalls Kingdom, and you'll see just epic, long closing songs. However, this album's a little bit different. Since we don't have a real concept to this album as far as I could discern, there wasn't any narration, which was a big staple of the longer songs in Rhapsody's past. And this long song, The Kiss of Life, felt a little disjoint at times. It's broken up into movements as far as I can tell. And some of these movements didn't really feel like they related too much to each other. However, the intro and the outro to this song really sounded like they were part of the same song, and that kind of tied the whole thing together conceptually. As far as the individual instruments, as far as vocals go, Fabio Lione sounds fantastic on this record. His performance is comparable to all the other albums in Rhapsody of Fire's catalog, which, if you listen to them, are fantastic. Now, there are some other vocals. We have some operatic female vocals, which are done sparingly, but when they are used, they're used very effectively. We also get choral vocals, which are used as sort of a backup in some songs and as a bombastic choir in the intro. In the song Shining Star, they really provide a good backup to Fabio Leone's choruses, and it really, really works to build and just song of epic proportions that just makes you want to keep listening to Rhapsody. As for the guitars, this album features much more intricate guitar parts and blazing guitar leads than Dark Wings of Steel ever had. It really feels like it's harkening back to the early days of Rhapsody, like albums like Power of the Dragon Flame or Symphony of Enchanted Lands. It sounds really, really good, and I really did have faith that Alex Staropoli could compose awesome stuff like this. In some songs, the guitar is just used as a rhythm instrument, however, but I do feel like that really adds to the songs, and it was really used to a good effect. As far as the bass goes, it's very audible throughout the tracks, and it does have its flourishes here and there, and it really just adds to the overall epic vibe of this record. The drums are very well played, and they always feel like they fit the music. As far as the keyboards go, they're not too present on this album. There's not a whole lot of synth as far as I noticed. A lot of the orchestration that you hear is done by actual orchestras, so the keyboards were not really used in that way. There are some keyboard solos from Alex during the album. As for the orchestra, I felt like it really added to the epicness of this record. It made it feel huge, like it was a soundtrack to a movie that just has not been made yet. It really just creates this epic vibe, and it's not used overbearingly like it was on the last record. On this record, it's used where it needs to be, and it's used for effect very, very well. And it definitely shows in like the last song as well as the intro, just how Alex's compositions just really made it shine and made it feel like it was a part of this band, and it didn't feel excessive in any way. Rhapsody of Fire has really proven with Into the Legend that they are still a force to be reckoned with in power metal, and they have not lost the magic that made the older albums so special. They still have the ability to make awesome neoclassical power metal with catchy hooks and awesome riffs and awesome use of symphonics. Now, overall, this is an 8 out of 10 album for me, and it stands high amongst the ranks of its predecessors, in my opinion. Now, if you've heard this album, let me know what you thought about it in the comments. I'll link you to some of the singles from this album, and until next time, keep it metal.